And in the work that you do and what you do for people, I was wondering, do you have a way to kind of help foster that self-belief? And what does that look like?
To answer your question, everything's a formula, and self-belief is a formula too. You can build it. But no one ever taught us how to build it, which is the freaking problem. All right, so the first part of the formula, it's a 3-part formula, very simple, but it's very hard to do. I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. The one person who I've seen kind of come back from my mom's side, his name's Jeff. He has a son named Dan. Dan is my second cousin. He was in the car with me. Driving to TGI Fridays, looking down at the GPS, look up, and I see the brightest lights I'd ever seen, right in front of my car.
Alan Lazarus is the founder and CEO of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast. He is also a business coach and trainer who believes in a heart-driven but no BS approach to both internal and external success. Alan's story of loss and getting a second chance at life will inspire you. His insights into self-belief and improvement will empower you. Enjoy the episode. Before we jump into the episode, do you ever get so wrapped up in your business you forget it's time to get someone special a gift? Not the same boring flowers or cookie-cutter bauble. No, you want something unique, one of a kind. Guys, I got you. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code if you're watching on TV and go to the Glass Arts Collective. They have dozens of handmade, one-of-a-kind items in lots of categories. You'll find animals, jewelry, holiday gifts, and lots more. All a one-of-one and ready to ship anywhere in the US. Head over there to find that special gift for your special someone, and thank you, Glass Arts Collective, for sponsoring GYET. And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I'll be your host here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. Alan, thank you so much for coming on, man. It is a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Gratitude first. As we mentioned, there's some Wi-Fi challenges, so we might interrupt each other on accident because I think that the video and the audio might be lagging a little bit. But regardless, we're here, we're showing up, we're taking messy, courageous, massive action, and that introduction is very fitting because, I faced mortality at 26 years old, and I had what I refer to as a quarter-life crisis where I really kind of faced all my regrets, and it really transformed my trajectory forever, and we can certainly get into that. But thank you so much for having me. At one point, this was definitely a dream come true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I like to start at the beginning with all of my guests. That way the audience understands, who you are, where you came from. Obviously, we'll get into that story, like I said, in the beginning. But for right now, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Okay, so I grew up in Massachusetts, a little town called Uxbridge. It's on the border of Rhode Island. And my childhood was... Now, I want to make this as clear as possible. There was some really good things, too. We grew up on a big pond, small lake. We definitely did some adventuring, and I experienced a lot. So some of it was really good, but a lot of it was really not. And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on in this story because I think it's a little more relevant. So when I was 2 years old, my birth father, his name is John McCorkle. My real last name is actually McCorkle, not Lazarus. So he passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old. I was 2 years old. My sister was 6 years old, and my mother was 31, and she was a stay-at-home mom. This is back in 1991. My father passed away. I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14, and my real last name is McCorkle. So my birth father was John McCorkle. It was Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. Big Irish Catholic family. And when my stepfather came into the picture, his name was Steve Lazarus, and I took his last name, I think, around age 6 or 7. But when we were sort of trying to become the Lazaruses, we weren't really associating much with the McCorkles anymore, whether it was conscious or unconscious. Fast forward, I playfully refer to age 3 to 14 as Boats and BS. My stepfather worked for a company called AGFA, A-G-F-A, and it was during the dot-com bubble. It was from in the mid-1990s into the early 2000s, and the economy was booming big time. back then, particularly in the US, but globally, .com bubble type stuff. And he did hospital computers for that company called Agfa. So we did very well. And I playfully referred to it as Boats and BS because my mom and stepdad loved to party, and they didn't get along. That's a polite way to put it. But ultimately, they surrounded themselves with people who have what I refer to as a pleasure-centered paradigm, which is just the belief system that life is about having as much fun as possible. So we had boats and ski trips, and we had a motorcycle, we had snowmobiles, my mom drove a BMW, trucks, we had a yacht, we had an apartment building. And we did upper middle class, did very well, and we had a bunch of vacations and stuff like that. So it was Xbox, Dreamcast, early Christmas presents type of life, but not great at home because my mom and stepdad didn't get along. But we definitely adventured a lot. 14 years old, stepfather leaves, takes his entire extended family with him. I still, to this day, have never seen a single one of them. Fast forward that same year, I'm 14 years old, hardest year of my life. Didn't understand this at the time, by the way. It's only in hindsight. I started doing some therapy in my 30s and really rewatching the movie of my life every year. And I understand it more and more and more, even though at the time I didn't know what the heck was going on. So in hindsight, it's very clear 14 was the hardest year of my life. So stepfather leaves, takes his entire extended family with him. He got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog. And he took 90% of the income with him. So I went from boats and ski trips to now I get free lunch at school because our income is so low. I went from hoping to go to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, my dream college, to be an engineer, to I don't even know how I'm going to go, even if I do get in, because it's $50,000 a year. This is back then, and I don't know how I'm going to afford it. And that same year, my mom gets in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, her sister Sandy, and my Aunt Sandy ostracizes us from that side of the family. And to this day, I've only seen 2 of them since. Same year, sister moves out with her older boyfriend, understandable. So by the time I'm 14 years old, I kind of lost 3 families. And so the scaffolding of my life was kind of ripped out from under me in many regards. And I handled that in 2 ways. And there's 4 trauma responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And because of the abandonment issues, for lack of better phrasing, I became this sort of social coward. And I've always been this weird sort of esoteric semi-genius kid who always had big goals and dreams, but did anything he could. I think Good Will Hunting's kind of a good reference for this. Did everything he could to fit in and to not lose anyone. I didn't want to lose any more friends and family. This is unconscious. So I became this sort of appease whatever other people needed for them to stick around, just be what they needed. But behind the scenes, it was fight. It was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. I became this sort of super achiever because I looked into the future. The past is painful. The present's painful. The future's going to be painful if I don't do something about it. And so no dad, no generational wealth, no trust fund. Like if it's going to be, it's up to me. And so I did. I got straight A's through all of high school. I have what's called the President's Award behind me, signed by George W. Bush. And basically you get 95 or above GPA for every report card, for 16 report cards straight. I got all the financial aid and scholarships that I possibly could. I got into my dream college, WPI. It's one of the best engineering schools in the world, best engineering colleges in the world. And I became a computer engineer, and I got my master's in business, and all of that was very challenging. However, I was also kind of the guy who could party and still do well type of thing. So yeah, it was challenging, but also I realized in hindsight I was also fairly gifted too. So I want to make that as clear as I can to be transparent. All right, fast forward. Now all of a sudden, this is post 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. I'm internships, tech companies. I'm a computer engineer getting my MBA, and now it's 21st century and I'm very sought after. And I was a broke high school and college student, so I didn't need much. I lived with my girlfriend at the time. It was $500 for rent. We split the rent. I drove a 2004 Volkswagen Passat for $5,000 cash. I was so used to going without at this point that I just didn't need much, but I made tons of money. I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, and then 125 to almost $200,000 a year. I peaked at like 180. And a bunch of different tech companies. iRobot, Sensata Technologies, Lens Americas, Tyco Safety Products, a little company called Oz Development, and then I eventually landed at a company called Cognex. And Cognex sells industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all over the world. They do machine vision, so the eyes of a robot is the best way to think about it. So I'm in my early 20s. I paid off 84 grand worth of debt in a single year. I have $150,000 in an investment account with all different tech companies and stocks and index funds. And I don't spend much because I'm so used to going without. So I just am building wealth, and I'm working for these companies. And I did inside sales engineering for Cognex, and then I did outside sales engineering. I managed Vermont, Connecticut, and Western Massachusetts. That was my territory. I'm up in New Hampshire. At this point, I'm 26 years old. I'm in my mid-20s. I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. The one person who I've seen kind of come back from my mom's side, his name's Jeff. He has a son named Dan. Dan is my second cousin. He was in the car with me. Driving to TGI Fridays, looking down at the GPS, look up, and I see the brightest lights I'd ever seen right in front of my car. My fault. I was supposed to yield and didn't. The yield sign was covered by the snowbanks. This is 2015, bad winter that year. And I end up on the wrong side of the road, dark winter night, and then two things saved my life. One, it wasn't actually a Mack truck. I thought it was a Mack truck. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck. There's a bunch of those in New Hampshire. Number two, thank you, Volkswagen. Holy crap. I used to call this car the tank. 2004 Volkswagen Passat, German-engineered steel trap of a car. I literally called it the tank, a heavy-set vehicle. So the whole front end was completely collapsed in. This was not a fender bender. This was a head-on collision. But the frame stayed and the airbags deployed. And so he hurt his knee on the airbag, my little cousin Dan, second cousin, and I hurt my face on the airbag. So physically, we were okay. But I've seen pictures of my dad's car, and I've seen pictures of my car, and they don't look very different. And so I'm sitting there, just quarter-life existential crisis, because my dad died in a car when he was 28. And I'm 26 at the time, and this is the second chance my dad never got. And so I was just completely, every regret you can imagine. Did I make poor choices? Did I choose the right career? Did I choose the right person to be with? My friends, like all of it at once. And so that was my quarter-life crisis that turned it all around. And so what I realized in hindsight, even though this took years to figure out, before 26, I was achievement-oriented and I was improvement-oriented, but I wasn't self-improvement oriented. I wasn't personal development oriented. I wasn't personal growth oriented. So it was more career and professional development, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, but it wasn't about self-improvement. And I found self-improvement after that, and I'm telling you, I dialed that up to 11. I just went all in on self-improvement in every regard possible. Every book I could get my hands on, courses, you name it. Now get this. I go from externally successful, internally unfulfilled, which sucks, to the opposite, which is I'm super internally fulfilled now, happy, healthy, productive, fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach, start my own company. Thought leader was the term I used at the time. But I went broke. So now I'm internally fulfilled and externally unsuccessful, which is unsustainable and also kind of sucks a little bit. So what I've come to realize in my 30s is we all got kind of go through that journey. And I'm finally in the last phase, which is successful externally and internally fulfilled. I've got an 18-person team now. We have 1,900 episodes at Next Level University. And we've got we work with 61 podcasters. I coach 26 individuals now in my business coaching, one-on-one coaching. And now I'm a coach, trainer, and podcaster. But ultimately, that's where we all want to get, is both externally fulfilled, externally successful and internally fulfilled, which I think is actually ridiculously hard to do. I actually think it's fairly easy to be successful or fulfilled. I think it's very difficult to do both, because what is meaningful work for each individual is usually not what the economy pays a lot for. Not always, but if you can get to that place where your work is meaningful and you're turning your passion into purpose, into profit, and you're both internally fulfilled and externally successful, that is a wonderful place to be. And it took me 30 years to do. And that's what I help people do now.
Wow. That is an incredible story. And there's so much to touch on right there. But, going back to your car accident, you have that moment where, you're still alive, right? Thank God. Thank Volkswagen, right? You're still here. But you're kind of having this realization moment of, did I make the right choices? Am I where I want to be? And obviously the answer to that question ended up being no, which I imagine affected your mental state negatively. So how were you able to pull yourself back out of that kind of funk and then realize, hey, I'm here, I've been given a second chance, and I can use this as fuel? Like how did that switch get flipped?
Yeah, so I used to not understand this because one of the challenges about being so unique, and all of us are unique, is that you don't really know what's different about you consciously. And I've come to sort of analyze this upside down and sideways, especially in my 30s. Because as you get older and older and older and older, you start to see the contrast between you and others, and you start to wonder why. And I know that's kind of a me thing because not everyone analyzes it, but I do. And there's three things that, because a lot of people say adversity is your advantage. And I realize that I used to say that too. And I realize in hindsight that it's not. It's if you have a lot of self-belief, which in psychology is known as self-efficacy, and you have a growth mindset, and you have developed a lot of resilience and grit, adversity can be an advantage. And you can take a dark time and really, to your point, flip that switch and let's go. And then the big dark holes you find yourself in, the tools and skills to climb out of those also build skyscrapers, metaphorically. But that's not true for someone who doesn't believe in themselves and who doesn't have high self-efficacy and who doesn't have a growth mindset. And so, unfortunately, most people don't achieve their goals and dreams because they don't believe in themselves. And we were never really taught how to build belief. And people who do believe in themselves a lot, by the way, it's mostly unconscious and subconscious. They don't even know that they do. Mm. It wasn't until my business partner, Kevin, said, dude, that's never going to land. And we're podcasters. We've been together now for 8 years in business. And he didn't have a lot of self-belief. And he had a very challenging childhood as well. And the difference is that when you don't have self-belief, instead of adversity being your advantage that makes you work harder, aim higher, and get smarter, it actually becomes escape. You choose alcohol, you choose drugs, you choose whatever. And I did some of that too, so I'm not standing on some self-righteous high ground here. But what I will say is that the reason why the car accident changed my life is because I believed in myself a lot. And if I didn't, I don't know if it would have had that big of an impact. Because some people get in a car accident and then they just keep going back to their old patterns. For me, it changed everything. And so it changed a couple things. Deep down, it changed my why, my motivation, my drive. I used to think that success externally, unconsciously, would like make my life better. And when my stepdad left and the wealth went, both in the economy, but also him taking 90% of the income, I think that I thought wealth would save my family or change my life. And I think to some extent it does, right? I mean, obviously, wealth is one important facet of life, one of the most important. And you have to master finance one way or another. You just have to if you don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. However, sometimes you have to achieve, when you achieve a surplus. I remember at one point there was this referral program at Cognex, and I brought all my, I brought my high school friends to college parties, and then I brought my college friends to corporate. And I realized in hindsight some of that was the abandonment issues that I had. I kind of wanted to bring everyone with me, so to speak. Mm. And that was a huge mistake, to be completely honest. And I'm not trying to be unkind about that. I genuinely think that you have to sort of sail away from a lot of past relationships if you want to grow. You just do. You have to. And this is what I do for a living now. So I'm not just saying that. But to answer your original question, what flipped the switch was I had been used to dealing with pain and suffering. It wasn't new to me. Most of my life had been pain and suffering up to that point. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And then number two, I never really questioned my ability to achieve things. And I realize in hindsight that is what makes the difference ultimately. And so I'll be very clear that story is awesome and I appreciate it. And I think it's unbelievable what I've been able to do given where I started. I really do. Because I do look like a silver spooner, and it's not until you hear my story that you realize that, it couldn't be farther from the truth. However, I did have 3 advantages I need to be very clear about. Number one, I was born in a country that is the largest economy on the planet by a significant margin. And they pour into my brain financial aid and scholarships I was able to get that I couldn't have gotten if I was born other places that are less fortunate. So that's number one. Number two, I'm also gifted. And you're not allowed to say that about yourself, but I think it's important for people to know, because I was the kid who could party all night, not go to class, and still get straight A's on all the calc tests, right? And I realize that that's not the case for other people. Because when you're a kid, you own it, and you're like, why am I good at everything? Like, I don't get why I'm better than my friends at stuff. And then you get older and older and older and older and realize, okay, so I'm definitely gifted, whatever you want to call that. Okay. And if I wasn't, would I believe in myself? And that's a whole nother esoteric question. Yeah. And then the third advantage that I had, which again, I used to be too much of a coward to share, is that obviously, right, I'm a white Caucasian male who has some advantages in that regard as well. Although I did have some jobs that I wasn't able to get because I was a white Caucasian male due to affirmative action. But my point is, at the end of the day, most people would never have climbed to where I've gotten to from where I started. And rather than be, some ungrateful sort of anyone can do it blowhard, I'm just going to be honest and say, it's not my fault my dad died. It's not my fault my stepdad left, but it is my responsibility to find a way to make a life out of that. And I made a ton of mistakes and I made a lot of poor choices, but I statistically made better choices than most. And I tried really hard to learn and grow along the way. And fortunately, I had a quarter-life crisis that woke me up from some of the vices like alcohol and drugs that did impact my life. And I think that very few people are willing to unpack the downside, the less than ideal parts of their story, which I think gives us a false view of what it really takes to actually get to a place where you're both successful and fulfilled.
And you're right. Not a lot of people have the foresight or the courage to go back and analyze those moments, because it can be scary. It can be painful to relive those things, but ultimately there's a lot of healing that comes out of that. And I know that you would agree with me in that statement. And one of the things that you said, getting into the whole entrepreneurship journey, is that you've got to be able to believe in yourself in order to really do this and make it work. And, with your partner, you said that he kind of struggled with that. And in the work that you do and what you do for people, I was wondering, do you have a way to kind of help foster that self-belief? And what does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for asking. That is the freaking question, in my opinion. Because self-improvement, health, wealth, life, and love, awesome, success, fulfillment, it all starts with self-belief. If you don't have high self-belief, you better build it, and you better build it quick, because life's coming for you. Okay? I do have a formula, and I'm an engineer, so please forgive me for that. Genuinely, I'm at numbers. Everything is numbers and formulas and statistics. Everything. Okay? So you lock that part of yourself up when you're a kid, because when a girl says, hey, do I look fat in this? And you say yes at level 6 out of 10, that doesn't go very well. So you learn very quickly it's not safe to be smarter than. You just have to know. And by the way, that's what I think about myself too, right? So it's not that I'm being unkind. It's just the truth. So anyways, to answer your question, everything's a formula, and self-belief is a formula too. You can build it. But no one ever taught us how to build it, which is the freaking problem. All right, so the first part of the formula, it's a 3-part formula, very simple, but it's very hard to do. The first one is state. State what you're going to do in advance. So I never once stumbled upon straight A's. I decided in advance I'm going to get straight A's. I decided to get the President's Award when I was a freshman in high school. And I know that sounds cocky to someone who doesn't believe in themselves, but I just decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I went and did it. State, prove, self-assign is the formula. You have to state in advance what you're going to do. Then you have to prove to yourself, aka your unconscious and subconscious, that you're going to do it, whatever it takes to do it. And then you have to self-assign. I did that. I decided to do it. I did it. And it was me who did it. That's how you build belief. And I don't care if you're trying to get the President's Award, straight A's in high school, or if you're just trying to apply to that next job and make sure that you're an engineer. It builds belief when you prove to yourself. So I told my business partner, I said, I'm going to do a marathon. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to do a marathon. We were trying to weigh in. We did 10-pound and 10-week challenge, and I was way behind. I was like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it dehydrated. He's like, well, you never trained. And I said, I think I can do it. I'm going to go slow, but I think I can do it. I think I can do it without stopping. Now, I did do it, and I did it dehydrated, and it was a 95-degree day. It was around a track by myself. My girlfriend came, but no one else. And it was atrocious. It was terrible. But the first half marathon was actually pretty easy. The second half was alarmingly hard. And I playfully joke and I say the first half was easy. The second half was The Walking Dead. It was so bad, the second half. And it was also because it was high noon. I made a lot of mistakes. But I didn't stop. And Kevin asked me, like, why didn't you stop? And this was one of the most painful self-imposed experiences of my life because I wanted to stop. Every part of me wanted to stop. It was really painful. And I didn't train for this. I was a bodybuilder, not a runner. And he said, why didn't you stop? And I said, I had to prove to myself I could do it. And he said, why? And I said, because I couldn't lose self-belief. External achievement, it's in psychology, it's called external self-efficacy. It's built through proving to yourself that you will do what you say you're going to do. And a lot of people thought I was cocky. And the truth is, I think I was to some extent. And I realized why. If I have level 10 self-belief and only level 8 humility, I'm going to look level 2 cocky. I have more self-belief than I do humility. And that's clear to anyone listening. However, it doesn't mean I'm not humble. And trust me, as I've gotten older and older and older, I've gotten more and more humbled by life. But the formula is state what you're going to do, prove to yourself you can do it, and then self-assign it once you do. Most people aren't stating anything. They're stumbling upon success or failure. They're not at self-assigning anything, and they're not proving anything because they never stated it. And then they wonder why they go through life drifting around. When good things happen, they kind of self-assign it or maybe not. When bad things happen, they totally self-assign it and then pretend it wasn't them socially or whatever for status. I think that what we need to do is sit down and start small. I think self-belief takes humility, and rarely do those go hand in hand, because starting small takes humility. I researched this in January of 2024. We do a monthly meetup every single month. We've been doing them for many years, and they're free. And in January, we did setting clear goals for 2024, and I did research, simple research, and I researched this, and it said only 4% of human beings have written goals, and only 8% of them ever achieve them. And I was like, whoa, that is insane. I've never not had written goals, ever. And Kev said, yeah, but that's a you thing. And all my clients have written goals. All my team has written goals. Like we do, goals, metrics, habits, skills, and then identity work. And identity work's the inner stuff. But I'm a reverse engineer. So I think in numbers. And so to me, what's the point of doing anything if you don't have a goal, right? But other people are like, well, what about the journey and the experience? And I'm like, why does that matter? I'm kidding. Obviously it matters. But remember, it's not about the journey. The destination you choose in advance dictates the journey. Driving from Boston to LA is a very different journey than from 30 minutes south. And so you have to choose goals and dreams that force you to embark on a journey that forces you to build belief, because all what we really want in life is self-belief and self-worth. And that only grows through, the self-worth is a different formula, but through overcoming challenge after challenge after challenge that is self-imposed challenges. And unfortunately, we all have this atrophied self-belief muscle deep down that we hide and don't want to tell anyone. And I'm not including myself in this, because I think self-belief is one of the very few things that actually did come naturally to me, which relationships never did, of course, because most people don't have it and they think I'm cocky and I think they're, unintelligent, and it's this whole thing. And engineers always have low self-worth anyway, because we struggle to talk to humans. I had to learn that through massive conditioning. But at the end of the day, self-belief is a formula and you can build it, but you got to start small and you got to be intentional and you have to self-assign it once you prove to yourself that you did it.
So let's take, for example, just a small thing, like um, like signing up for your first half marathon, right? Like you said you're going to go, you're going to do this thing, you're going to complete it. Not necessarily that you're going to do it dehydrated, but that you're going to do this and complete it, and it's going to just be done, right? So on that journey of decision, where does it start? Does it start with the huge end goal of getting to the finish line, or does it start with the small step of day one, I'm gonna go buy shoes? Like, how does this work?
Nice. So I one of my I guess friends, his name's Evan Carmichael. He's lives up in Toronto and he has a big YouTube channel. He's the top 10 rules for success guy on YouTube, and we interviewed him once on his YouTube channel, and he said long-term strategic thinking is stupid, and I disagreed with him strongly. I think it's really important, but of course I would. So most people say start with buying shoes. Now I'm gonna hold a duality here. Duality is holding two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. And if you can't hold duality, by the way, you're in trouble, because everything is light and dark, up and down, left and right. Like, you need to learn how to hold duality. I'm not trying to be pretentious here, but you just do. Like, dogs can't hold duality. They just, food, pee, poop, like they can't hold humans can. You can hold, okay, I'm going to work really hard and get R&R. I'm gonna be a leader, an effective leader of others, but I'm also gonna lead myself. It's the power of the and, not the or. I'm gonna be healthy and wealthy. I'm gonna be in love and building a business, right? So duality is very important. But anyways, so I'm gonna hold a duality. I'm on the far extreme of reverse engineering. So I don't ever do anything until I reverse engineer all the steps backwards. And I realized when I got older and older and older and older that no one else is doing that. Not no one else, but very few people. And so in chess, there's novices, there's amateurs, there's experts, there's masters and grandmasters. And so the grandmasters are basically reverse engineering 12 to 15 moves ahead. And then I'll go from the bottom up. So novices, beginners is 3 moves ahead. Novices are 3 to 5, and then you've got amateurs, which is 5 to 7, and then you've got experts, which is 7 to 9, and then you've got masters that are 9 to 11, and then you've got 12 to 15 for grandmasters. In life, it's the same idea. And some people are thinking 12 moves ahead, genuinely. They just are. And they developed the prefrontal cortex to the point where you can project into the future and reverse engineer every step in advance. I'm not a good chef, so I can't do that in cooking. I'm not good at fixing cars, so I can't do that in car. But I can reverse engineer in business because I've been studying it my entire life. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance is my jam. So because of that, I always reverse engineered the goal and then started to buy shoes. Now, does that mean things come out of nowhere that I didn't expect? That's called learning, and that happens, okay? But most things I can anticipate. It turns out not a lot of people can do that because that muscle has atrophied in the brain, and thinking is actually really hard work. So they hooked people up to fMRIs, and they had them imagine themselves in 10 years, and some people could only imagine a stranger. And some people could imagine themselves, exactly what they're going to look like, exactly what they're going to feel like, vision. This is called visioneering, engineering a vision. And some people literally can't do it. It's not, they haven't developed it. And so I've been developing it ever since I was a kid. I don't know if that was inborn or if I developed it through practice. I'm assuming it's both. But I've never just started with buying shoes, ever. So what I do is I say, okay, I want to do a half marathon. So, okay, I'm going to run a mile the first week, and then I'm going to bump it to 2 the second week, and then I'm going to bump it to 3 the 4, and I would reverse engineer every single step. And I actually have something called a peak performance tracker that we do with all my clients, where it's metrics and habits, and we have a total productive output, and it's all math oriented. So it's literally, here's your goal, let's reverse engineer all of it. And then what happens at the bottom is your identity. You usually have to do things that are outside your current identity in order to achieve a new goal. And that's the inner work that is usually what therapy focuses on. But ultimately, the metrics and habits, it's just math. It's just the scientific method, rinse and repeat. So yeah, you can go buy shoes, but if you go buy shoes just to buy shoes, you're in trouble. If you want to do a half marathon, yeah, go buy shoes, but now you also need a coach who can reverse engineer that finish line.
No, that makes perfect sense. It doesn't matter what the end goal is. You've got to, and I agree with you. You've got to break it down into particular steps, achievements along the way. And you mentioned at the bottom of that is the identity. Now, that's obviously where it starts. But when you get to the top, when you get to the end of that goal, does that identity shift?
It's so cool that you just said that. I'm reading a book in book club called Identity Shift.
Ha!
And
Nice.
I was on book club earlier today. There's a cool, so I'm a big film guy, love film. And the reason why is the human condition, right? I mean, why do we resonate with these characters? Victim, villain, hero, guide, how do we grow? All this, mentors, all this stuff. But ultimately, when you set a new goal, you have who you need to be to achieve the goal, you have who you want to be, which is your ideal version, and then you have who you really are. And those are never the same. And you have to find the center sort of that, and you have to grow in order to achieve your goal. If it's a good goal, you should have to grow to achieve it. Or you can do status and perception and social media and rent a Ferrari, and a lot of people are doing that. But if you really want to grow toward a goal, you have to actually work on yourself. And the cool analogy, metaphor, and why I mentioned film is I like The Hobbit, the films. The first film I think is great. I think all of them are great, but when Bilbo Baggins is in the beginning and he's going off on this call to adventure, he asks Gandalf, "Are you sure I'm going to survive this?" And he says, "No, I can't guarantee that. And by the way, if you do survive this, you will not be the same." Mm. And when he gets back at the end of the films, and I know it's a book as well, when he gets back to where he started, at Bag End or whatever, he's not the same. And now it's empty because he's become so big and he's outgrown that little pot. And so we shall not cease from exploration. At the end of all of our exploring will be to return back to where we started and to finally understand the place for the first time. I went back to where I grew up as this older man, and I realized, oh my goodness, I get it. And we've all had that experience where we had this little place called Blueberry Hill that I played on as a kid, and it turns out it's Blueberry Mound. I thought it was like a big mountain, and it's this little freaking pile. And we also had this tree fell in our backyard, and we called it Mount Washington, and we would climb it, and we thought it was this huge tree, and now it's like, are you kidding me? That's Mount Washington, right? So ultimately, all of us are on that sort of growth journey, and that's the point of a goal anyway. Everyone's like, why do you have all your achievements back here? I believe in achievement because achievement is what makes something of us. What makes me different? Alan, I'm going to be 36 in November 17th. I'm going to be Alan version 3.6. And Alan version 3.6 is going to be smarter, more capable, more intelligent, more articulate. I'm going to be able to help more people. I'm going to be a better partner to my beautiful girlfriend. I'm going to be a better homeowner. I'm going to be a better business owner. I'm going to be a better leader. And Alan 2.6 was an absolute moron compared to Alan 3.6. Right? So if I compared to other 26 years old, year-olds, I was probably fairly aware and probably made decent decisions. But compared to me now, I'm thousands of times more intelligent, more capable, more courageous. There's no way at 26 I could have done this. No chance. And so the metaphor that lands with that is this is the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I think the 16 or 15 or whatever, 15's out. And when I was a senior in high school, Apple and Steve Jobs released the very first iPhone. Mm-hmm. And it was a revolutionary breakthrough. If you compared that to this, that phone would be hot garbage. It would be terrible, like alarmingly bad. That's why it's hard to watch old movies, right? But at the end of the day, it's the same is true for us. This is Alan 3.5 you're talking to. Alan 3.6 is coming, and I'm telling you, I'm working on him now. I'm going to update my software. I'm going to update my operating system. I'm going to update my hardware and go to the gym. I'm going to update my brain. I'm going to update my belief systems, my mindset, my resilience, my grit. I'm going to be more consistent. I'm going to be more virtuous. I'm going to make better choices, have better habits. I'm going to track better metrics. And Emilia and I, our anniversary is tomorrow, actually, 5 years. We're going on 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. We met 5 years ago. I was in the gym alone on a Friday night, and yesterday we celebrated this because we went to the gym together. And after the gym, she said, "Isn't this so much better than 5 years ago when you were alone?" And I DM'd her. I finally had the courage to DM her 5 years ago in the gym. True or false? Do you have a boyfriend? And or are you in a relationship? And she responded, "Yes, a relationship with myself." And then we were off to the races ever since then. But anyways, so every anniversary we go back. I had this folder called Emilia Best Memories with a heart, and I have 2 years worth of pictures and audio messages and videos, and we go through them. We put it up on the projector last night, and we went through them, and to see our dog Tucker and how little he was back then, and audios and videos, and we have a charity we do together called Books for Babes, and videos from that, and it's oh my goodness, look how naive we were. We were like little kids back then compared to us now. And back then, we were already ahead of a lot of people in terms of consciousness, right? So the idea here is you can upgrade yourself so much. But to your original question about goals and about when you get there and do you have to shift your identity, the answer is 1,000 times over. You're going to have to improve your identity 1,000 times over. I think we uncover our essence, and I think our essence grows, and I think conditioning puts mud on it. And so after 26, I think I started going back to my true self, and my true self is now being amplified by better beliefs and better habits and better metrics and that kind of stuff. And that's what I really help people with in my coaching is I help you get back to true self. That's why you're not fulfilled, by the way. No one is fulfilled when they're not being them true selves. When I was hiding my engineering part, I was not as fulfilled. It takes a lot of courage to share that stuff, to share all of this. But I'm more fulfilled afterwards. But it definitely has that vulnerable feeling afterwards as well, because I'm definitely an esoteric weirdo who basically hid that for as long as possible.
Yeah, I can definitely understand the trepidation when it comes to sharing sides of yourself that you're not comfortable with. I went through a round where I was dealing with just crippling anxiety, like so much so that I had to leave my current job because I couldn't work. I couldn't stand to be around a bunch of people. And I went into therapy for that. Thank God for therapists. And I came out the other side, and sharing my experience with people while I was going through it and also while I came out the other side was just the most uncomfortable inner feeling I think I've ever experienced when I was trying to talk to somebody. But I tell you what, man, the more you do it, the more you put it out there and just share, you'll find an inner strength that grows from that. And also, you also will be surprised about the connection that you're able to form with people because they're like, you know what? I've dealt with that too. Or I know someone that went through that. So it makes you realize you're not alone in your, what you went through, your struggles or your weirdness, whatever it is. So I'm glad that we went down that little rabbit trail because it's so important to be vulnerable and share.
Whoever you are, be a good one. Whatever you are, be a great one. And there's 3 ways we lie to each other and we lie to ourselves. You can inflate, deflate, or omit. And usually it's all to belong. We all want a sense of belonging. So for me, I would pretend I was dumber than I was. And I think that's why I had such an alcohol problem, because it made me dumber and it made me less future oriented. So I could fit in better. Because imagine me trying to fit in. I mean, how's that even going to work? Right? My therapist said this. She said, you're never going to feel as much belonging as some people because you're on the very statistical high end of most bell curves. What she's trying to say is that some people fit in easily. And I'm not trying to be unkind here, but if you are in the middle of any bell curve, you are in the majority. Mm-hmm. I'm not in the majority in almost anything, and I've analyzed this. I'm not saying that, I'm above average and I'm so like that. Please don't with that. What I am saying is my true self, there's levels of uniqueness, and my business partner says this. He says you check too many boxes. People don't think it's real. Not a lot of engineers look like this. And to not make it about me, what I'm really trying to share here is whatever that weird thing is, it's probably very different. And very different is scary. Because if we were ostracized from our tribe, it's almost like we all live in this little comfort zone, right? The 3 fears of life. It's fear of success, fear of failure, fear of judgment. So we have our peer group, and we don't want to be enough of a failure to where we're not a success in our peer group, but we don't want to be too successful that we get ostracized from the group either. And so for me, I would just stay in this little comfort zone of I don't want to be too weird, and I don't want to be too much better than others. I don't want to be a failure either. So you stay in this little social comfort zone. And there's 2 types of courage. I think there's competence courage, apply to the job, do the thing, try the marathon, sign up for the whatever. And then there's social courage, which is stand up for yourself and say what you actually think. That's been the hardest thing, is to just say what you actually think. I remember, oh, you really think, I made a poor choice? Yes, you did. Like, that was a terrible decision. I'm not trying to be unkind. If you think that was a good choice, you're going to keep making that choice. And by the way, I admit my own poor choices, but you can't admit because you're so insecure because you know it's a bad choice and because you're insecure about your intelligence. And so at the end of the day, trying to be truthful and kind is very hard, but I think it's really important, especially with yourself. If you can't be truthful with yourself, like, are you fulfilled? 0 to 10, how fulfilled are you? 10 is the most fulfilled you've ever been. 0 is the least fulfilled you've ever been. If your answer's 2, you have to own that first. You're not going to work on something you don't think you need to work on.
Right.
Right? And so that's what coaching is. It's you assess, and then you go to root cause analysis, and then you solve it through work. So anyways, I don't want to come off pretentious, but ultimately there are, your car breaks down, you bring them to the mechanic. Your plumbing, I don't know anything, right? So you call a plumber. When you're struggling with anxiety like you were, you call a therapist. I think that takes humility, and I think that's really important. And I think all of us need more coaches and therapists and people. We need to be willing to seek help, whether it's a book or a podcast or a therapist or a coach. You don't have to be alone. There are people that have answers. There are. You don't want to get the wrong therapist, so be careful. You don't want to get the wrong coach. Be careful. Don't sign up for some $10,000 program that promises you 3 quick tips. But there are people that are willing to help that have been through what you're going through, and you can reach out, and it will get better. It will. Yeah, it can get better.
It absolutely will. And, that's one of the great things about doing this podcast and being able to talk with amazing people like yourself is it helps bridge that gap for people and exposes them to, maybe what they should look for if they're looking for a coach, if they're looking for that help, this kind of honesty and confidence when you're speaking because you've lived the other side of it. So it's very, very valuable. And what you focus on with your coaching, you focus on 3 really big aspects, health, wealth, and love. And most people, when they think about entrepreneurship and fitting into categories, they segment out and only pick one. Why are you focusing on all 3?
Yeah, the holistic piece. After 26, so I didn't take my health nearly as seriously as I would have liked. In college, I did for a while, quit drinking for 3 months, and I was so in the gym and I was on it, and I felt so good about myself because I was reaching my potential or striving for my potential. And then I let it go when I was in corporate, and I drank too much and too often. I didn't eat right. And so I saw some mentors. I've had a lot of mentors and coaches, and some of them are very, very wealthy, many multimillionaires, 1 billionaire actually. And what you learn is they took their health for granted big time. Not always, but a lot of times they ended up divorced and unhealthy. And there's a lot of examples of that. So, I'm not trying to be mean again. Alan, you don't have to keep saying that. Disclaimer, I'm just being truthful. Steve Jobs, 57, didn't take care of his health. Come on. I didn't want to end up like that. So I looked into the future and I saw all these people that had achieved their goals and dreams, but they ended up divorced and or wildly unhealthy. One of my main mentors was the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. I'll keep anonymous, but he gained 30 pounds in corporate and he was very unhealthy. And I just didn't want to be like that. So to me, if you're not healthy, wealthy, and in love, it's not going to be a fulfilling life. And so I started optimizing for fulfillment and then hoped success would be a byproduct instead of optimizing for success externally and then hoping fulfillment would be a byproduct. I think the second one works better, but it takes longer and it's much harder because even if you crunch the numbers, and I gotta jump in a second here, but if you crunch the numbers, if you want to be top 1% in health, top 1% in wealth, and top 1% in love, that's actually 1 in a million right there. 1 over 100 times 1 over 100 times 1 over 100. So that's 1 in a million. So it's much harder, but it's much more fulfilling, which I think is ultimately the point, right? To reach your potential, to have a meaningful life, to contribute and lead by example. I didn't have a lot of male role models leading by example growing up, and that's an understatement. Honestly, I'm very disappointed. And so I want to be the male role model that I needed, and I needed to do that by example, and I needed to do that by taking my health just as seriously as my wealth.
So with those 3 aspects, is getting those in order in your mind and in what you teach, is that how you optimize for success?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's multidisciplinary optimization is challenging because in each chapter you kind of have to focus on one over the others. So right now I'm in a wealth chapter, so I'm very focused on coaching and gross revenue for the company and 18-person team, so payroll is wildly expensive. But right now my health is second, and then my relationship is probably third, and then that shifts in the next chapter. So I'm going to level up my wealth and then kind of maybe coast a little bit on my fitness and my family, my immediate family. And then next chapter, I'm going to focus more on the other one and let maybe wealth coast a little bit. But none of them can coast for too long, right? The plants that you stop watering will die. But maybe each quarter you pick a main priority and then a second and a third. That's what I do with my clients.
Okay, that's a great tip, and I'm glad that you went there because you can't do everything all at once, and you're right. Life shifts, life moves. Absolutely. So I know you've got to get going. This has been a fantastic conversation, Alan. So I want to make sure that people know where they can go to get in touch with you, find out more, and just get into your world.
So this is what I've started sharing. If you're humble, you have work ethic, you are a grateful person who wants to earn their way to success and fulfillment, you're going to love me. You're going to love NLU. You're going to love what we do. Tried and true fundamentals, metrics, habits, goals, identity, skills, development, and Next Level University, how to get to the next level of your life, level up yourself, level up your podcast, level up your business. If you are not humble, if you're entitled, if you're ungrateful, and if you want maximum rewards for minimal effort, you're not going to like us at all, so don't even reach out, seriously. And you can reach out via nextleveluniverse.com. You can go to Next Level University, which is the name of the podcast. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. If you do reach out, please do. Just make sure you please provide context because like all of us, I get a lot of spam.
Yep, 100%. The email box is crazy. I get it. All right, guys. Well, those links are going to be below, so go check it out. If you think that Alan and his team is going to be the best move for you, please do get in touch. And again, Alan, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
This was such a pleasure on a Saturday. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Start with gratitude, end with gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing in the world, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you. All right, guys, you know what to do. Like the show, share the show with your friends. You never know whose life you can impact with a simple and free share, especially with great content like what Alan just shared. All right, peace. We'll see you in the next one.